I'm opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
Boat party, boat party, boat party, boat party. Oh, you know you're not invited, right?
No. That's a great song, though. Did you come up with that?
Yeah, actually.
Oh, man, you did? Totally got to get that copyright. That was amazing.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Get it? Hello, ladies and gentlemen.
Gotcha.
Today we are doing a special Anatomy of a Movie for Hello, Ladies, the movie. It's a cross-collaboration between Popcorn Talk Network and AfterBuzz TV because back in September of 2013, this was a TV show. Due to cancellation, they made a movie out of it.
Yeah, and I'm glad they did because I was really bummed out when I heard they weren't going to do a season 2 because I saw the whole first season when it ran on HBO, and because it's HBO, it's not like regular TV. You got swears, some dirty stuff in there, and I'm a huge fan of Stephen Merchant and Ricky Gervais, so I was plugged in from day one of the show.
Absolutely, and that is the voice of JTE.
What's up, everybody? JTE.
And we have Phil Svitek here, big fans of Hello Ladies, the TV show, and obviously the movie. Today we're gonna talk about the movie. Because that's what we like. But before we begin, if you haven't subscribed yet, whether to AfterBuzz TV on YouTube or on iTunes, definitely do so. Or, of course, the network that we're kind of doing today, Popcorn Talk. Go to youtube.com/Popcorn Talk Network. Subscribe or go on iTunes and subscribe there. There's a lot of shows that we do here at the Popcorn Talk Network. So definitely worth checking out. Let's get into it. First and foremost, what made you fall in love with the TV show? Let's kind of start there, then we'll bring it to the movie.
Well, I'm a huge fan of Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant. I'm one of the people that says the UK Office is one of the greatest shows ever. It kills the US. I argue with my friends a lot because everyone's like, oh, Steve Carell's so much better. I was like, what the Office UK did, first of all, they did it first. And it's so much more realistic. The U.S. Office got so ridiculous towards the end. It was almost like a goofy cartoon by the end of the series. And it got
dragged out. That's one of the reasons why I love just British TV in general, is that it's just in and out.
Yeah, 6 episodes per season, and then just like this did, it ended with a movie, which is fantastic. I wish U.S. shows do that because almost every U.S. show I love is great for about 1 or 2, maybe 3 seasons, and then it gets dragged out and just falls off the map.
Yeah, very, very few series can kind of survive in that way, and especially if they're network and they're pulling 22 episodes a season. If they're doing 13, they can sustain for a little bit.
You're not stretching it out. And listen, they've had some success. I mean, Office was their biggest success easily. Extras also went to HBO. Loved Extras, and I think this is the thing with Hello Ladies. I wonder how people outside of LA connect as much as I feel like maybe I connect with this show.
And therein lies the first problem. The second problem is it's also, as we've been mentioning, it's British humor. And the problem with British humor, there's nothing likable in The Office. There was no redeeming quality to him, very rarely. And with Stephen Merchant in this as Stewart, in the TV series, he was despicable. To the point, my favorite line ever was he had his friend, and I think it was Wade, watching his house while he went on a date, and he says to him, "There's Chinese food in the fridge. Beep, beep. Oh, not to have, but the number if you want to call."
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that's funny because Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant, they always do these with their characters where you don't really feel anything for them at first. Even in I know going back to The Office, the UK Office, Brett, played by Ricky Gervais, is a despicable human being. He cares more about what people think than what he actually feels about himself. And just like this show did with like Extras and all these other shows, they bring it to a very dramatic, almost kind of sad place. And sometimes performances, especially, I'm jumping all over the place, but Extras, they ended this with a movie, and there's a straight up emotional scene where Ricky Gervais is talking right to a camera because he's on this like a celebrity Big Brother show. And I remember watching it thinking, my God, I was dying of laughter half an hour ago, and now I'm like almost to tears because of how dramatic the scene was. And this movie which I'm trying to think. The series never really got dramatic. It was always pretty much funny.
It was until the last episode. Remember, because kind of
the season finale. Yeah.
Yeah. That you had the whole thing with the models, and she dumped him, and kind of Jessica was going through her bit, and Wade with the breakup of his wife, coming to a realization he was never going to win her back.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's true. But this movie, the last half hour is almost I want to say joke free, but very light on the jokes. Whereas the first hour, I was laughing so much throughout this whole thing. And then the last half hour, I was like, okay, they're doing the Ricky Gervais, Stephen Merchant thing. They're going to get serious and send the show off with a little bit of a heartfelt note. And that's kind of how I did.
And, speaking of the first hour, so let's start there because it was so many awkward moments.
Yeah, that's what they're so good at. They're so good at awkward moments.
Absolutely. One of my, obviously, by the way, this whole thing is billed as, Stewart's ex-lover. Yes. Comes back with her husband and from there. And which, by the way, is the catalyst. We've always known kind of Jessica and Stewart. We're meant to be together now. Yeah,
I kind of knew that from the second, third episodes. Like, they live together practically. She lives right outside. He runs to him. They always have this. It's that usual best friends. Then they realized, they could be more than best friends kind of story. So nothing too new there.
Yeah. And so, by the way, remind me to talk about the percentages.
Yeah,
we'll definitely talk about that. But in the sense of in that when they're when they're first kind of meeting, and it's the most awkward. They haven't seen each other for years. Yeah. And he just gets right to them, like, you got any British beers?
So, the husband was just looking for anything he could do to, like, put a notch in Stephen Merchant's belt. Cause he just wanted to tear this guy down because he knows his wife feels a little bit like, what did I miss out on here by breaking up with him? Because he told I love the flashback, by the way, in the beginning of the film. It shows you, like, how she kind of, they were making fun of this guy, and then it's almost like she portrayed him by dating him and then eventually ended up marrying him. It's like you kind of went against what we were, talking about. We're joking about this guy. Diss. It's the ultimate diss. Oh, God. It's like that girl's like, oh, that guy's such an a-hole. And then, like, you see him, she's kissing him, like, a week later. It's like, come on. I mean,
but it also makes sense. I like the backstory because it finally makes sense why he came out here to LA.
Yes. Yeah, which was really cool because... surprised they didn't start this season with that.
They kind of need it.
I guess he didn't need it. I wonder if they, they decided. I wonder if season 2. Part of me wishes there was a season 2 because I love the characters, and this movie did feel like listen, we got an hour and a half to wrap up this whole story, and I think they actually could have brought out for a whole nother season. But listen, I'm not gonna complain. I'm happy I got the movie.
Absolutely, and I'm glad it was an hour and a half. Had they tried to do this in 2 hours of comedy, you know what I mean? There's difference if you're either going to do the season or you're going to do it in an hour and a half. But I think to compromise and say, like, well, we could have done a season, so why don't we do 2 hours? Yeah, never would have worked.
Yeah, and I really like the half an hour block that the first season ran in. It felt every episode felt very complete, and when I was watching this movie, it did feel like, oh, okay, it didn't really feel like a movie. It just felt like a really long episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Some fun trivia. We'll talk about all the actors, but we have to talk about Nicole Kidman.
Yes, the best scene in the whole thing is my opinion.
So Stephen Merchant offered the cameo role to Nicole Kidman after he discovered that she had been to one of his stand-up shows.
Oh, okay.
And so that's how the kind of idea came about to get her really involved, which is neat.
I'm not surprised that she did it because Stephen Merchant and Ricky Gervais are so good at doing this. Life's Too Short, which is a series they did right before this with Warwick Davis, about like he was a little person who was like in Hollywood and he's playing himself. And every episode they had Liam Neeson, they had Johnny Depp, Helen Bonham Carter. I mean, every episode, and the same thing with extras. Samuel Jackson, Orlando Bloom. I mean, you name it. They got huge people to come in to just do these really small cameos.
Because it's so simple. It's easy.
Yeah, and then they're playing themselves, and they're kind of making fun of their, like, either their place in Hollywood or, like, Liam Neeson in Life's Too Short wants to do comedy. And there's this great scene with him, Stephen Merchant, and Ricky Gervais where he's just trying to, like, deliver these comedy lines, but he does it in the most Liam Neeson way where he's just like, I don't even want to repeat some of the things he said, but he's like, I have HIV and I don't know how I got it. He was trying to do these lines with Ricky Gervais, Steve Merchant, and they're just like, it's impossible for him to be funny. So the fact they got Nicole Kidman, and she didn't really do anything too crazy. It was more like set up the scene, basically. Do you want to set up the scene of like what happened?
It's evening.
Yeah.
The building is sturdy, as is up to code.
Yeah, he's basically there with his fake girlfriend because he wants to impress the girl that's coming to visit, the one that hooked up with the guy that was an a-hole. And it's so great because listen, I've done this before a little bit. I'm not going to lie. I brought a girl to a Hollywood party in the Hollywood Hills, and there was a few actors and actresses there, and I was just kind of like playing a role of, oh yeah, this is normal for me. Oh yeah, you know, I go to these parties every once in a while. This was my first time ever to a Hollywood party. It was for Halloween, and I remember just thinking, when I was watching the scene, I was like, oh my god, this is so close to what I've done before.
But it's made all the better because at first Jessica kind of takes the heat and blame of like, yeah, it's my friend.
Yeah.
And they have that little quarrel, which, by the way, it's a double thing because it's working towards their relationship.
Yep.
But in the scene, again, it's like, okay, who's actually friends with her? And it's like, all right, fine. You said you're friends with her, so you go over there.
Yeah.
It's like, shoot.
I love these situations they're able to come up. Rick Gervais, Steve Merchant, they're such good writers because they also write all these movies and shows, and they, for some reason, they're perfect at creating the most uncomfortable social situations. And again, it's different to see Stephen Merchant in that role too, because it's always been Ricky Gervais. Extras, The Office, especially Extras. Every episode is literally, how can we put this guy in the most uncomfortable social situation? So when I first heard about Hello Ladies, I was a little curious. I was like, wow, Stephen Merchant's going to star in this thing? Because he's always been kind of the sidekick lackey to Ricky Gervais. And I'll be honest, I wasn't sure if you'd be able to pull it off or if I'd really want to watch him as the lead. But I was totally impressed. He really delivers.
Absolutely, and I think he channeled some of Ricky Gervais.
Oh, definitely. As I was watching this, I was like, this easily could be Ricky Gervais.
But it was finally funnier to see, kind of, instead of playing with fat humor. Instead, now we got tall humor.
Tall, lanky glasses. A lot of glasses jokes. Make fun of his glasses a lot.
Because I mean, but that goes back to The Office. Remember Ogie?
Ogie. Yeah.
Because that was Stephen Merchant.
Yeah, Stephen Merchant. And even, I'm trying to think, he played the agent in Extras. And he was just a complete moron. Like, I mean, it was like out of a cartoon. He was just an imbecile. So it was nice to see him play a more realistic, kind of, somewhat down-to-earth human being. But just like in Extras, Ricky Gervais dealt with celebrity and how that affects you and how it affects the way people treat you. And this one, it's like more about how you want to be perceived. They seem to do that a lot in their shows. Like, they want to, it's about, do you care about who you are? Do you care about how people see you?
Well,
they seem to wrestle with that a lot.
I mean, the only time he kind of opens up is with Glenn.
Yep.
Because he's like, hey, do you shave your pubes? Hey, can you teach me?
Yeah.
But with everybody else, he's like, I'm the expert.
Yeah, it's true. I love that opening scene on the boat where he gives him what are the three things? Human contact, introduction, human contact, sexual, bring up sexual,
make the conversation sexual.
Yeah. And I was like, wow, that's pretty good.
And then he's like, I remember he runs back. He's like, what's the third again?
Yeah.
Sexualize the conversation.
And I love how he's not smooth at all. His character is not. He put his hand on her. He almost like pets her at one point, pats her on the head. These guys, they can never do anything smooth because that's just not who he is. And he's trying to be somebody he ain't.
And that's, and even when he sexualized the conversation, he's using something that was obviously referenced earlier. Mm-hmm. But he blows it off because again, if it's not him, he's not interested in it, or if it's not getting him to his goal, and that's why he's interested in what Glenn has to say, because Glenn's successful at this, and then he pulls this out of his, out of his ass because he heard it before, and she's like, "Oh, tell me more."
Yeah,
he doesn't have any more because he's never interested in anybody else's things.
And again, like before he even approaches her, he's like, pull up her Instagram, and she's like skiing for New Year's, and he's like, oh, and he mentions it like right away. She's like, how'd you know I went skiing for New Year's? He's like, oh, just a guess. And she's like, oh, and ridiculously, she's like a Russian model who's ridiculous, like beautiful, and the things that this guy actually, the guy who is also the somewhat boyfriend of his roommate, and he basically, what does he tell him? He gives him this advice, and it works. And I think that's why Stephen Merchant keeps doing what he's doing, because it kind of worked for him. Even in the first season, it kind of worked for him at times.
Yeah, but it's to such a pathetic level. Remember that time?
It's true. Yeah.
Remember that time, he's going after the girl, right? She says, meet me at this party. He goes to the party. She's like, that party was lame. We're at another party. And he just keeps doing this over and over. And you know, I know a lot of guys. I've been that guy. And that sucks. But you have to eventually be like, okay, I have to be above this.
Yeah.
She may be hot, but come on.
Yeah. You can only trade in so much dignity to get. And he, in the show, just will basically do anything, whether it's throwing his friends under the bus, you know, getting rid of them, or just completely selling out. He'll sell out basically and lie, whatever he has to do to heck up with these hot girls. And it's not because he likes them, really. It's because he wants to be one of those guys that gets the hot girls.
You know, so when he meets Stephen Tobolowsky's character,
yes, who's so good.
He's like, "Don't look him in the eye.
Don't look in the eye." Yeah. And
I brought you this gift. I don't want that. I apologize for this gift.
The whole, you know, no one. That was a running joke that I think. Don't look him in the eyes. I kept thinking, because he almost looked like he's like, why aren't they looking me in the eyes? I kept waiting for him to say, be like, what are you doing? But he never brought it up. I think it was actually don't look him in the eyes.
Yeah,
which was great.
Just was what it was.
Yeah.
I think unless you were a hot girl, he didn't. You know.
Yes, exactly. I mean, he was the most shallow human being ever.
Which, by the way, it's funny. You know, I loved. He plays Stu in Californication.
Oh,
so I loved his portrayal, and you know, just because
scumbag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about Christine Woods, who plays Jessica. She's,
really good.
You know, I mean, with the polar opposite of Stewart, she's actually trying, and she's got a good spirit.
Yeah, she does. You know, it's frustrating. And I heard some people say this about the show. She keeps going out with that guy, Glenn, and you're just like, and you probably had friends like this where you see a girlfriend of yours and she's with this guy, and you're just thinking, why are you with this guy? He treats you horrible. There's a scene in the beginning where she's like, oh, if somebody came up to you and said, you know, what were we? And this guy is literally doing everything he can to avoid the question. And that happened all throughout season 1, so it's nothing new. And I thought towards the end of season 1, I thought she was kind of moving away from him. Mm-hmm. But when the season picked up, she's already back with him, and it's frustrating. It's frustrating to see it.
It is, but especially in Hollywood, it's one of those traits, and you know, I mean. Yeah. You look at her life, she had nothing going for her, and so that's why she took to college, and now she's kind of rebuilding herself, and she's getting a lot of confidence, so she's finding out who she is, much like Stewart ultimately ends up doing. True,
yeah. I'm trying to think of another character that reminds me of that from the series. Stephen Merchant, and I go back to Extras because how this one is like two friends who don't really see each other. The end of Extras almost had the same thing happening, and they left it a little more ambiguous, so you don't know if they really hooked up or not. This one, by the end, they're basically boyfriend, girlfriend.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I wonder if I live in LA, and this was before, I used to watch Entourage, and I really dug that show. The second I lived in LA for a few years, and I rewatched that show, I got so much more out of it than I did before. And watching the show, I think, my God, if I didn't live in LA and, you know, been in some of these situations, I wonder if I would relate to the show as much.
I think ultimately, though, that is the beauty. There, you know, I did the same thing with Entourage, and you know, that show was so successful because people just liked that lifestyle.
Yeah.
I mean, that's different because I mean, here he does websites, he goes to Hollywood parties, but it's not really, quote, you know, apart from the actors and things like that, Entourage was very, very Hollywood.
True.
You had meetings with agents, you had film shoots, you had everything in between, you had the luxurious lifestyles with the cars and this. Here you get glimpses of it, but he's not in the business.
The show really focuses on the LA dating scene, which in my is much different than anywhere else I've dated. I lived in Florida, Connecticut, you know, even out of this country. LA, it's so much most places like who's the person. Here it's about what do you do?
Yeah, what can you do? What can you do for me?
What can you do for me? Or like, what exactly? That's the first thing a girl asks her. She's like, "Oh, what do you do?" Whereas other places I grew up, I was like, "Oh, who are you?" Blah blah blah. I want to get to know you. Here, it's like, "Where are you in the industry? What do you do? What do you drive?"
Yeah.
I mean, one of my first dates in LA, I brought a girl to a bar. This is like literally, I was only here for like 2 months, and she's like, "Oh, I know this bar. Let's go get a drink." I got the bill. We got 2 drinks. My check was for $55.
Yeah, standard.
I knew I was in trouble when the menu came and there was no prices on the menu. Because, listen, I just moved to LA. I was not a rich man at this point. I'm still not a rich man. And as I'm looking at this menu, I'm like, there's no prices on here. And this girl's like got a nice dress on, and I'm already like, this bar is...
Did you pick it?
No, she picked it. She's like, I picked her up.
Go.
I picked her up. She's like, oh, I know a nice bar. I was like, okay. And I went inside. It was all neon blue. I was like, this is not great. And then I got the drinks. $55 for 2 drinks. What? That's the Hollywood dating life. Let me tell you. I started dating outside of Hollywood after that. I got smart.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, and that's why, like, again, he's going into this mentality, like, remember, she's over in Palm Springs, which is about 4 hours away from LA.
Yes, yeah.
And he's so mad at her because he thinks the rules apply.
Yeah.
Just like models in general, they're so by the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what? My friend said we're going to Palm Springs. But you wrote a smiley face there. You're going to meet me.
He's like, you need to be more consistent with your emojis, more responsible.
Yeah. But again, you cannot apply those rules in this type of circumstance.
That's something you would only deal in LA or Hollywood, unless, that's not something you can deal with in Boston or, New York you probably would. But anywhere in Middletown America, you're not going to deal with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but even New York, there's a sense of...
Yeah, New York, I can see that.
There's a different sense. I mean, the East Coast in general. LA's very like, it's no big deal.
That's true. It's a little more laid back here.
Yeah. That's why, again, going back to that episode where he followed the girl, she was like, what? It's no big deal. You just come to the next party.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I think anyone that watches the show, it's funny no matter what. But if you live in LA and you're part of that scene, you're going to get more out of the show than you, and no one person would. So,
hear that, listeners and viewers, if you're tuning into this show currently, comment below. Let us know when you're going to fly to LA, and JT will personally supervise your trips. Yeah, some of our situations would be very similar to the show. Burning crash fire would not work out. So as mentioned, this movie is finally discovering who these people are, both Jessica and both Stuart, because I really appreciate towards the end when he brings his friends on the boat, the boat party. Yeah, and because it's such a big change, because he's, again, as we opened up the show and we joked about it, you're not invited to the boat party. Exactly. He would never thought to have done that. And his friends aren't, he's got like, his one friend's kind of overweight, one's in a wheelchair, the other one's kind of a geeky looking guy, and Stephen Tobolowsky's like, what is this? It's cramping my style, get him out of here. And it finally shows some growth, because I feel like at the beginning of season 1, he would have threw him overboard just to hook up with any of these hot girls. Yeah. And he's finally grown a little bit more as a human being, where he's like, you know what? And he actually told the guy off, which was great. And Glenn, yeah. And you know what? That was the nice part, because that comes back to play later when Glenn sees Jessica and he says, oh yeah, Glenn was such an a-hole. Mm-hmm. Because it finally, it's something that she's wanted to do for the longest time. Even though she split up with him, she never had the wherewithal to let him know, like, listen, you can't treat women this way. Yeah. She was kind of an enabler in the first season. And even now, I mean, just because she broke up with him, that was such a funny scene. Are you texting? No, just a quick email. Yes. Oh, yeah, that was so funny. and the way she says, like, is this ever going to work out? Or are we ever going to be more than this? I can definitely see a future where we can have an honest conversation about this. Yeah, that's what we call stretching out the relationship. There's a difference between just literally lying and then just like, that's such a low. Just giving her the go around, trying to keep things going. Almost Stephen Merchant, I believe he directed this by himself, and I think this is the first thing he's done without Ricky Gervais. Yeah. How do you feel like it held up to extras in Office? And have you seen Life's Too Short? I've not seen Life's Too Short. Okay, I would highly recommend that. It's really funny. To me, each is different. Obviously, it held its own. Mm-hmm. The movie had a tonal inconsistency only because he was so negative towards people initially, and there were for joke purposes, it was slightly inconsistent in the beginning. Okay. I felt. But regardless, I absolutely love the movie. Each is very different. You know what I mean? Because The Office is about The Office. And it's not this way, right? It's ultimately about Jessica and Stuart.
Mm-hmm.
The Office, it's not really about it's about Pam. And what was his name? The guy who plays the Hobbit now.
Martin Freeman.
Yeah, but what's his name in the show?
Oh, in The Office? Oh God, I can't remember.
Jim?
No, it's not Jim.
Because that's
the American. Let's just say Martin for now.
Yeah, and then they had such a. It ultimately was about them,
Mm-hmm.
And he had that great speech like, "Hey, you know what?" Right before she comes back at the Christmas party, he says, "Hey, you know what? My life's gonna go on. Just because if you turn off the cameras, doesn't mean my life's over. Life's gonna continue."
You know what's very similar, and I guess you could say spoilers for The Office also. If you watch this, I hope you watch The Office. And Jim gets rejected, or I'm sorry, Martin's character gets rejected, and then it cuts back like a year later, right?
Mm-hmm.
In this movie, he gets rejected in a very similar way, but not so much like it wasn't built up as much. It's more like, hey, maybe we should date. Then he finds out she was still seeing that guy, just like she went back to her boyfriend in the office. And so I do feel like Stephen Merchant and Ricky Gervais kind of do the same tricks a lot, and maybe they should try to do something a little differently. Because, listen, if anything, even though I love this movie, it was very predictable.
Oh, absolutely.
It was very predictable. And I was hoping maybe they would do something a little different because they've, like The Office, and even to an extent, the extras, they've done this kind of story before.
Fair enough. I definitely see that. I mean, here's the thing. Ultimately, this movie is a romantic comedy.
Yeah.
So,
but would you call the series a romantic comedy? Because I wouldn't.
No, absolutely not.
Okay. So the movie was, but not the series.
No.
Okay.
And that therein lied the difference of why ultimately, like, if I had to say which was better, the movie or the TV show, I would say the TV show.
TV show, of course, yeah.
Yeah. For that very reason.
Yes. This honestly, I feel like we're lucky we even got this movie. I think Ricky Gervais and Steve Merchant have such a good relationship with HBO. They're like, listen, we can't give you season 2, but we'll give you like, an hour and a half film just to kind of finish it off, which at least we got that. Because I would have hated, I would have hated if it just ended after season 1.
Yeah.
And we didn't get anything else, I would have hated it.
But it came out of nowhere for me. I remember someone taking a picture of a billboard and saying, hey, guess what? And I was like, whoa. Oh, and I saw the picture and I got all excited.
Yeah. I know. After the first season, I heard nothing for the longest time. And then I heard about the movie. I was like, all right, well, sucks for not getting season 2, but hey, at least we're getting a movie. And I was happy because all the other series, Life's Too Short ended with a movie, Extras and Office, and they all wrapped it up nicely. Yeah. So I was happy we're going to get that. We got it.
And, as we've been mentioning, the movie's very self-contained. I mean, the first beat is, okay, I got to get a girl because, my ex is coming to town. I got to impress her. And through all this, Jessica. And then the focus shifts to Jessica, and, okay, he got rejected there. And they end up together. That's basically the beats.
Yeah, very, like I said, very predictable.
But I liked, is it the greatest speech ever told? No, but I like the idea, the percentages.
Oh, the percentages, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because every romantic comedy, you have to have like a win her moment or a win him moment, and to me, the percentages is almost it's a nicer way of saying like, hey, listen, you're not going to do any better than me, and I'm not going to do any better than you.
I got you.
So let's quit this whole trying to do better than each other and just marry each other.
Well, I didn't get that far.
Yes, but it's basically that sentiment.
That's the sentiment you do get at the end of it. And, again, it was predictable. I'm really curious if season 2 started, if it would have probably a little more progression to it. Mm-hmm. This did feel like it very quickly kind of happened. She ran into her ex, and he was like, oh, you told him off. Then he ran into her at the party, and then afterwards the party, he's like, percentages. It all felt a little rushed to me. Maybe if the first last half hour was really all the dramatic stuff. I wish they would have maybe sprinkled that in towards the beginning a little bit more. I don't know. It's tough.
Every
it's
comedy
tough.
though starts off with so much. It's the first couple minutes are so jam packed because you can be sort of whatever. You can just have fun with it. Mm-hmm. But then eventually you have to move the story along, and yes, you will have less jokes per minute towards the end. Yeah. It's just comedy the way it is.
It's tough. Listen, overall, I laughed for the first hour consistently. Last half hour, not so much, but I was okay with that because I got to tie up all the little stories. And even his friend met a girl at the bar.
That was...
I'm so happy about that because I felt so bad for him in the first season. I was like, this guy cannot catch a break with his ex-wife. So I was really glad that happened.
And it was nice of him to finally recognize, you know, he was like, okay, I'm going to go, but you stay.
You stay. Yeah, he saw what was happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, you know, I was surprised his friend with the long hair and the glasses, kind of like his assistant kind of guy, he doesn't really have much of an arc throughout this whole series, or even the movie. He's just a side character for laughs. But I was curious if they were going to try to do something with him, but they didn't. But I did love that one scene where he's like pretending to be assistant in front of his ex-girlfriend. He gives him $100. He's like, look at that. And they literally, the husband and wife like turn around and look out the window, and he's just like, give me the money back. I was like, yep, that's him. He's fake.
What did they say? Hey, boss, can you check over my work?
Oh, yeah, the worst acting ever.
Sure. Oh, this is really, really great. But you know what would make it better? Try, I don't know if this is what it would. Try JavaScript instead.
Yeah, he's literally just
brilliant.
He's typing the worst, just like gibberish on there. That was so good. I mean, and here's the thing: when you live in Hollywood and LA, and you're anywhere in the entertainment industry, there's times where you kind of do that. You want to do that at least. Maybe you shouldn't do that, but there's moments where you kind of want to make yourself bigger than you actually are.
JT, luckily, I've never had to lie. And you stick with me, you will never have to lie either.
There you go.
You will just be a baller.
Just be a baller. All right. Well, I've been lying here and there.
Ladies and gentlemen, JTE helps maintain the Popcorn Talk Network. Lord help us all. For better or worse, that is the truth.
That's my pickup line at bars. I'm like, hey, I run the Popcorn Talk Network.
Hey, it's a true statement.
See if it works.
All right. Anything else you want to talk about? I mean, we don't need to. I know anatomies are usually a lot longer, but I don't.
Yeah, it's tough. What would you like Stephen Merchant to do from here on out? Would you like to see him do a theatrical? Would you like to see him do another series in HBO? Like, where do you think he should go from here? He does act once in a while. I mean, but nothing huge.
I want to see him act. I want to see him and Ricky Gervais
back together again.
Back together, but also not just like, okay, Stephen Merchant in the background. I want to see them front, both of them. And
like they're both starring in a series together.
Yeah. Like, I don't know, it could be like Dumb and Dumber-esque, where it's, you know, a buddy comedy.
Have they announced their next project?
I don't know.
I should have looked. I could have swore they announced something recently. They are doing a Brent movie, which is going to be a movie based on the character Brent from The Office.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm sure Stephen Merchant will be writing and directing it with him, but he probably won't be starring in it. But I really wish this show had more of a following. I think not enough people have seen it, so... if you made it this far, you've probably already seen it. But tell your friends to go watch this show. If they have HBO Plus, I guarantee they'll enjoy the show.
Absolutely.
I can't see anybody not liking the show. Again, like you said earlier, the main characters aren't the most likable people.
Absolutely not.
And if you like The Office or Extras, and if you haven't seen those, see those. But give it a shot. It is a different brand of humor, but I think it's some of the best, funniest writing I've seen in a series in years. Yeah,
and to me, I personally love that sort of dry humor and just yeah. So anyway, thank you guys for watching us. Thank you guys for tuning in. And as I mentioned, if you're interested in the discussion of all of the episodes, 1 through 8 for Hello Ladies, the TV series, check out AfterBuzzTV.com. It has all of them. And
I'm gonna revisit them. Because after watching the movie, I just want to go back and watch the whole season over again.
And luckily, it's hosted by Pretty Girls.
All right, well, I'm going to watch the after show right afterwards.
We are not.
Oh, wow.
But
I'm sorry, guys.
We do have Pretty Girls on the Popcorn Talk Network, so check that out. And guys, we have a lot of cute guys.
We're not bad.
So definitely hit that subscribe button. And if you prefer audio, do that as well. Just go to iTunes or wherever and subscribe to all the great shows, whether it's Box Office Breakdown with JTE, whether it's Anatomy of a Movie with me, whether it's we got Jedi Alliance, we got Marvel movie news, we got DC movie news,
profiles,
we got the Schmoes Know movie show, of course. And everything else in between. We got Meet the Movie Press. That's doing really well.
Oh, it's a great show.
So thank you guys for joining us yet again on another Anatomy of a Movie. We'll see you here on a more serious movie perhaps next time.
Yeah.
But hey, we had fun.
It's Thanksgiving. Let's go to a boat party.
Boat party. Boat party. Boat party. Boat party. Boat party.
Dial another number. No one home. So then it wastes its time with TV, and it wonders if it lost the old.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.